Yet another astounding week to be a Manchester United fan. The season is unravelling at, frankly, a Usain Bolt pace. So today I'm going to figure out how to fix it this coming summer with your help. As you can see from the title, I'm looking at signings Man United should make this coming summer. I took to Twitter to get Manchester United fans to submit suggestions for players they think the club should be interested in. I've selected 32 of the most talked about suggestions, as you can see in front of me, and I've got 4 tiers. I've got priority, a player I think would be a good signing, a player that is just unrealistic, mainly because of the money involved, or a confusing suggestion. I don't really get it. I've gone in position order today, and I think it's important we're realistic. There's lots of reports about Manchester United potentially facing FFP, PSR issues, and trying to raise money from sales. So the way I'm kind of approaching this is United have about a £75 million pot and can sell about £75 million worth of players. Therefore, I'm saying roughly United have a £150 million budget to fix their problems this summer, which isn't a lot. And before I start placing players in categories, I want you guys at home to let me know in the comments below the 3 priority signings United must make. The first suggestion was actually a goalkeeper. Now, let's not forget Onana was only signed last summer for somewhere between 40 and 50 million pounds, depending on which report you read, and that suggestion was Costa. Now, for me, this is a slightly confusing one. Obviously, Costa, an outstanding goalkeeper, Porto the best defensive record in Portugal this season, despite not winning the league title. He's astounding. We all love Diogo Costa. But for me, the reason I've put him in confusing is I don't think United can afford to sign a goalkeeper. I think Onana has to be stuck with, and I think he's been all right. Lots of errors this season, particularly in the Champions League, where the performances were quite frankly unacceptable, and he's come out publicly to own that. In the league, he's actually been okay for me. You know, in terms of post-shot expected goals numbers, he's, I think, 6th in the league. I'm not sure he's ever going to be Alisson, but his shot stopping has been all right. If he can just remove the high-profile errors, the silliness, United have a really good goalkeeper on their hands there. He'll be better playing behind a settled back 4. United have had 28 different back 4 combinations this season in all competitions. 14 different centre-back combinations. Settle it down. He'll look a lot better next season. Into defenders, and right-backs were being suggested by Manchester United fans, particularly Denzel Dumfries and Jeremy Frimpong. Now, I'm going to point out the obvious here. Neither of these guys are right-backs, very much wing-backs. And if the two were available, Dumfries would really confuse me. Contract is up in 2025, and Inter are surely going to want 30 to 40 million. Jeremy Frimpong is 23 years old and he has a £34 million buyout clause. So why United would go for Dumfries if they were going to shift this 3 at the back system and wing backs were suddenly going to arrive and not go for Frimpong, I would be extremely confused. There are arguments to be made that he might end up developing into more of a right winger than a right back, because that's certainly where he's done a lot of his best work for Xabi Alonso this season. We're talking about probably the best right wing back in world football in 2024. So the reason I'll put him in good signing is if a managerial change was to happen and that manager wanted to play with a wing back system, let's say in some hypothetical world Ruben Amorim was to arrive, then you can imagine Jeremy Frimpong acting as a wing back. Another issue arises in the form of Diogo Dalot though, doesn't it? He's been United's player of the season for me this year. He offers excellent two-way cover. He can invert. So does that mean he then goes back to being the backup to Frimpong? Is a bit messy. I think right back is way down on the agenda of issues for United. Into the centre-backs then, and this is an area clearly United will be looking to recruit in. Rafa Varane's contract is up in the summer. They're not going to trigger that extra 12 months by all appearances. Johnny Evans surely going to be allowed to leave on a free as well. I think United should look to retain him in some sort of a coaching role. Lisandro Martinez has been injured the entire season. Harry Maguire looks like the model professional now, doesn't he? And one of United's most consistent centre-backs. And then Victor Lindelof, who has also struggled with injuries and hasn't had much game time this season. So United need to recruit at least one centre-back. And it's pretty obvious to me that Todibo would be a very good signing. He's part of a Nice side that are 5th in Ligue 1 this season, but have the best defensive record of any French club. And at 24 years old, 6'3", he's not only got the physical attributes you look for in a Premier League centre-back, but his pedigree on the ball, as we can remember going back years, part of the reason Barcelona signed him originally, is extremely high. We're talking about a centre-back that is in the top 10 passes, the top 10 progressive passes, the top 10 take-ons, the top 10% of shot-creating actions for all centre-backs in Europe this season again. Now, he is under contract until 2027, but we know Manchester United now have a connection via INEOS with Nice. Does that allow them to get a deal done? Potentially, but it's going to have to comply with the sort of fair market standards. Barcelona take 20% as well after that Nice purchase, so I can imagine 40 to 50 million euros being required for him. As for Jarrad Branthwaite, I would love him as a Manchester United fan. 21 years old, commanding, plays off both feet, has played in a back four, has played in a back three, excellent in the air, excellent with the ball at his feet, as he proved at PSV when he was playing a very different style to how he plays now at Everton. I just think it's unrealistic. The reports are that Everton are going to want £75 million for him. I don't think United have that kind of money going around this summer to spend on one player. If Todibo's available at 40 and Branthwaite's available at 80 or 75 or 80, I struggle to see how United can make that deal happen. There is also a potential issue with the fact he's left-footed. He wants to play on the left side of the back four. That's also where Lisandro Martinez wants to play. How does that work? Can you play two left footers at centre-back? For me, it's pretty unrealistic for United to be spending £80 million on Jarrad Branthwaite. Whilst we're on the topic of budgets, Tosin has to be spoken about. Tosin Adebayo, who is going on a free, for me, should be a priority signing. He's still only 26 years old, 6'5", large amounts of Premier League experience. Jason Wilcox, who has of course come in as Manchester United's technical director, was formerly the head of Manchester City's academy and was very involved in the development of Tosin Adebayo. Worked with him at nearly every age group, captained him and gave him that youth team status. It feels almost too obvious, doesn't it? You are going to be competing with Chelsea and Newcastle by the looks of it for his signature. But he probably would be more willing as well to arrive and compete with players for those places in the back four. Given that he's going to cost nothing, why would you not go for him? Bremer is just unrealistic. Juventus won 80 million for him. He started 34 games for them this season. 27 years old now and under contract until 2028. It's going to be really hard to prize him out of Juve. They have got some financial issues. Again, like Branthwaite, 80 million for a centre-half that isn't another member on this list. I just don't see it happening. Same as Mark Gahey. Unrealistic for me. An excellent player. He's actually one of my favourite centre-backs in the league to watch, given he's still only 23 years old. He's just so good on the ball, very, very athletic, composed, feels like a great personality to have around the team, but is going to be priced out of a move to Manchester United. Doesn't have a release clause in his contract. The only issue I would maybe have is that you've got Lisandro Martinez, who's 5'10". I think Mark Gahey's 5'11 and a half, 6 foot, something in that realm. Is quite small for a centre-back duo. Suggestions were also coming in for Edmund Tapsoba. United have had an interest in him in the past, according to Fabrizio Romano, and you can see he's had another outstanding season. Obviously, the way Xabi Alonso likes to build from the back, you're going to see his defenders, particularly his centre-backs, with very high pass volumes, very good progressive pass numbers, and that's exactly what you're getting from Edmund Tapsoba. At 25 years old, he'd be a great signing. I just think it's unrealistic. The only players that are going to leave Leverkusen this summer are players with buyout clauses. Part of the reason Xabi Alonso has agreed to stay at the club is because the board have promised him this squad will not be dismantled in the way we've seen former Bundesliga sides that have hit new heights just be picked apart by the likes of Bayern Munich. That brings us on to Ronald Araujo. Links again this week to Manchester United, to Bayern Munich, that Barcelona have to sell a star, and Ronald Araujo's name is creeping up the list. Obviously, that's because he is one of the outstanding central defenders in Europe. He's so physically gifted, he's excellent on the ball, he's still only 25 years old. You know, if the reports of a €60 million fee are to be believed, it's a priority. I know Barcelona fans will be laughing in the comments. They'll be saying €60 million, you're joking. absolutely no chance. We want 100 plus. We want a billion, blah, blah, blah. They were saying the same thing when United ended up agreeing a 60 million euro fee for Frenkie de Jong a couple of years ago. And yes, that deal never happened because he didn't want to leave Barcelona. And the same thing might happen with Ronald Araujo. Very possible. And I know I said it's unrealistic. United would spend 80 million on a Branthwaite or a Bremer or a Guehi. But I think Ronald Araujo would tempt me. He would tempt me. If he's available there for 60, 70. What he also gives you is something I think United lack a lot. And I'm going to talk about this throughout the video. Is physical warriors. United are so easy to knock off the ball. It's almost like you're playing an under-21 team at times. They don't have enough players who are athletes. Physical specimens that in 1v1s you wouldn't beat in. It's part of the reason Arsenal have been so good this year. Declan Rice, Gabriel, Saliba. You're not beating them in physical battles. Same with Ben White, Kivior, Havertz is a handful. United have none of them. A player like Araujo immediately increases your physicality and athleticism 50%. Would Araujo join United? Probably not. Okay, Barcelona fans and everybody laughing at me, it's unlikely. But he would be my focus at centre-back if he's on the market. We spoke about right-backs, centre-backs. Let's have a look at the left-back suggestions. There's quite a few in here, actually. And it's pretty obvious that United do need a left-back. Luke Shaw's been available for about 50% of minutes since joining Manchester United. Low numbers. Terrell Malacia was brought in as that guy to cover him, as the young option. He's now been out for an entire season with an extremely serious knee injury. So United probably will look to recruit at left-back. And I think Ryan Aït-Nouri would be a really good option. At 22 years old, though, and with a contract until 2026, his fee would probably prove to be prohibitive. He's on the borderline between unrealistic and good signing. But we have seen Wolves sell at reasonable rates over the last few years. This season, we've seen him operate a left back, a left wing back, right wing back, even an attacking midfielder in like a couple of games. His on-the-ball ability is astounding. We're talking top 2, top 1% for successful take-ons, for dribble success rate. Leaves a little bit to be desired defensively. And again, I do feel like he's better suited to a back 3 and as a wing back. Reports also suggest he's got a 50% sell-on clause to Angers. And if that's true, it's a huge factor in his price tag. Next suggestion was DeMarco. I mean, it's just unrealistic that, isn't it? We don't really need to say too much more than just to look at that and admire it. Especially from an attacking output perspective. What Inzaghi has been able to do with DeMarco is remarkable. A fantastic coach that personally I cannot believe is not being talked about more when the conversations around top jobs in Europe are cropping up. There are some huge positions potentially available, and I don't see Inzaghi's name mentioned at all. Italian coaches are some of the most successful external league coaches in the world. You think of your Contes, you think of your Jose Mourinho's. They are able to go to foreign leagues and put down a blueprint that works. Why are Bayern not interested in Inzaghi? But either way, he's unrealistic, as I think is Alphonso Davies, who appears to be leaving Bayern Munich in the summer. I don't know how hot that move to Real Madrid remains. It seems to have cooled down a little bit now, doesn't it? That Ferland Mendy has found a little bit of form. Doesn't feel like Madrid will be able to have Ferland Mendy and Alphonso Davies, probably be one or the other. If Alphonso Davies is available, you go for him. He's still only 23 years old. And when I was talking about athletes, yes, his injury history, though, does trouble me. I suppose these sort of numbers are kind of part of being that athletic body type that Alphonso Davies is, one of the most explosive players in world football. He's not just that, though. He's an excellent defender. If he's available, you get him. But a bit like Araujo, who's kind of I've thrown out there as a bit of a dream, I just don't know whether he'd be willing to play Conference League football. In fact, I think it's pretty unlikely. Alejandro Balde might be on the market. Don't really see it. 80 million euros is a big old price tag. The adaptation period to the Premier League would be tough. He's not the most physical player. He's excellent. He is excellent. And you hope next season he can get more minutes for Barcelona. But as one of the Catalan contingent that has come through La Masia, I think he would be low on their priority list of sales. And given what I was saying about United needing to sign a left-back, that leaves Ian Maatsen. I really like this suggestion. I do. £35 million buyout clause at Chelsea. Since he's gone to Dortmund, he's proven to be excellent. Last season in the Championship at Burnley, excellent. And you can mock the championship level all you want. We have seen players consistently being able to step up from the championship, be it Eze, be it Olise, be it Adam Wharton this season, be it Jared Bowen, and be superb. What's to say Maatsen couldn't do it? He's looked great at Dortmund. He's looked good in the Champions League. He's got a £35 million buyout clause. If Dortmund had a bit more money, they would be triggering it tomorrow. What will happen is he'll go to Dortmund. He'll be amazing for like 2 or 3 years. And then United will suddenly have to be bidding £80 million for him. His profile is so well-rounded. I really, really like him both defensively and in advanced areas. He's even played as a right winger at times at Chelsea. Not his most settled position, but he's super adaptable. And we've seen Dan Ashworth go out, let's say his work at Newcastle, and take a player like Lewis Hall, who hasn't really been favoured by Eddie Howe, I understand that, and sign him. There's nothing that suggests Ian Maatsen is unobtainable. He's got a buyout clause. It's possible. He's an astoundingly good young left-back. This makes a lot of sense. Into the midfield, and our first suggestion... Into the midfield, and the first name that was suggested is João Neves. €120 million release clause. I think it's just unrealistic. But there is no doubt in my mind that João Neves is going to be the next off of the production line of outstanding midfielders coming out of the Portuguese league. Still only 19. His work in the Champions League was great, over 6 tackles and interceptions. Domestically, he has been superb. But the key for João Neves is his mentality. Speak to any Benfica fan and they will tell you about his leadership for a 19-year-old, his commitment to the cause. They say he would bleed for the shirt. He's that type of player. Who's going to be able to afford him, I don't know. But he's going to leave at some stage. And frankly, let's all just hope Man City don't get their hands on him. Ezequiel Palacios... No, as I've said with the other Leverkusen boys, unrealistic. He's going to be staying there. I think he's on a contract until 2028. Unlike Frimpong, doesn't have a buyout clause. Great season. Brilliant season. So composed on the ball, breaks play up really well, receives it in the first phase, takes it on the back foot lovely, and under pressure, feels like he's got endless amounts of time. But it's Xabi Alonso at Leverkusen. He's agreed to stay another year. So will Palacios. Amadou Onana up next, and this would be a good signing. But only if you get him for the right amount of money. Anywhere more than £50 million is a risk. We can all watch his ground coverage, his tackling ability, and his physicality and say there's a player there. I really want to see him develop on the ball. I almost want to see him get another year at Everton. Everton themselves paid €40 million for him. I think it was 36 plus 4. I can see them asking for like 80 million. And if that's the case, he probably drops to unrealistic. In fact, I might put him in unrealistic now. Like Onana, another Premier League suggestion, João Palhinha, who for me would be fantastic. The issue is he signed that new contract when the move to Bayern Munich collapsed. However, reports in the German press were suggesting that there is some sort of a gentleman's agreement with Palhinha. I think that's obvious that he would be allowed to leave if a big club came in for about 50 million. Now, that for me represents amazing value, because I struggle to see the reason he would have signed a new contract if it didn't have some sort of clause or gentleman's agreement allowing him to leave when Bayern were clearly going to go back in for him. They were going to go back in for him in January. Reports were suggesting 55 million. The summer was meant to be even cheaper. If he's at £50 million, João Palhinha, it's just a priority. Defensive numbers off the charts. We're talking 7 tackles and interceptions per 90. Shifts the ball really smartly. But he's also a ground covering monster. I talked earlier about the need for athletes at Manchester United and leaders who are going to bleed for the badge. That's João Palhinha. Stick a profile like him next to Kobbie Mainoo and watch Kobbie Mainoo's creative and on the ball numbers jump. At the moment, he's having to cover so much ground that by the time he's on the ball, he's blowing. If the reported 50 million is true, you sign him. Even at 28. Frankie de Jong, just confused at this stage. Why are the links still there? It's clearly not... He doesn't want to come. Let the boy live in Barca. Sporting's Hulmund would be up next. He's got a 65 million buyout clause, so potentially a little bit cheaper than an Onana if his fees to be believed. Excellent numbers, again, in a title-winning Sporting side. He came in from Lecce only last summer, where he was outstanding defensively in Serie A. This season, those defensive numbers haven't been as high, but that's because he's on a ball-dominant Sporting side, playing a very different system for Ruben Amorim. Slight concerns about his physicality. He isn't the quickest, but he's an excellent reader of the game. He's a battler, and that release clause does tempt you. Whilst we're on the topic of release clauses, I also think Zubimendi would be a good option. Clearly, with a 50 million release clause, cheaper than Hulmand, he's going to have a lot of interest from Premier League sides, including the likes of Arsenal. If United's on the table and Arsenal on the table, it's a no-brainer. You go into the Emirates right now. He's not only superb on the ball, there's a reason Xavi saw him as the long-term heir to Sergio Busquets, but he's also excellent in his duels. You have a look at this chart from a few years ago in 21-22 when Casemiro was in the league. Zubimendi, higher aerial duel success, better ground duel success. So he's not just this silky player, he can get involved. He's an excellent reader of the game. He's also exceptional on the ball. United definitely miss that. They miss a player who is able in the first phase to receive the ball from the centre-backs, turn and play through the lines. So maybe you need a player like a Zubimendi who can receive the ball from Alessandro Martinez, turn and play from there. That 50 million release clause gets louder every minute. With Joao Palhinha down as my priority midfielder, he's 28. It does leave the option for a younger partner to be signed with him. Somebody who could become the heir to that throne. And I'm sorry, Leeds fans, start shouting. I think it's Archie Gray. Yes, he's still only 18 years old. He's Leeds through and through. He's the EFL Young Player of the Year. We all know about the lanky frame of Archie Gray, who has kind of taken the Championship by storm and feels like the next top prospect to come out of that division. If Leeds go up in the playoffs, no doubt they keep hold of Archie Gray. He signed that new long-term contract just a couple of months ago to 2028. His family are all Leeds United fans. He's a Leeds United fan. I think that probably puts United on the back burner. But United should be showing an interest in players like Archie Gray. He is going to be the future of England's midfield. He can play as a 6, he can play as an 8. He played most of this season as a right-back for Leeds. 40 starts this season. That versatility, combined with his ability on the ball, his ability to wriggle out of tight spaces, you can see why Leeds fans are excited. If Leeds stay in the Championship, Premier League clubs should be moving heaven and earth to sign Archie Gray. Let's go into the forwards. Out wide, a couple of suggestions for Nico Williams. I'm a bit confused. I don't think United need another left winger, and that's where Nico Williams has really done his best work this season for Athletic Club. He's going to go down potentially as a Bilbao legend after the Copa del Rey win. He's got the €50 million release clause, but do United need another left winger? Not quite understanding this one. Next up, the priority for me, Michael Olise. You might well have seen James Alcott's video this week talking about Michael Olise becoming the next Cole Palmer, the next superstar to arise in the Premier League. And I agree. At 22 years old, this is a no-brainer. I have very little doubt that Manchester City are already doing groundwork to try and get Michael Olise to the Etihad. He is outstanding for his age. So comfortable and composed on the ball. It looks like he's gliding through Premier League games. You know, some young players, they look like they're struggling physically, they look like they're struggling on the ball. Olise just looks like everything's in slow motion. There's also a real off-the-ball work rate to his play. Speak to any Crystal Palace fan and they will tell you he is not this sort of lazy, languid player the press try and paint him as. He works hard off the ball, as is demonstrated by his tackle and interception numbers for wingers being in the top 25% Europe-wide. He's also a big Manchester United fan with a release clause. £55 million. The reported release clause in his contract. I will be triggering that tomorrow. There will be question marks over his injury record. This season, not enough game time. 12 starts in the Premier League, 13 goal involvements in that time, the majority of which has been missed with a hamstring injury. If he passed the medical and we could see his fitness reports and there was no real long-term joint issues like ACL problems or back issues, I just don't see a negative behind signing one of the best young right wingers in world football. What that would mean for a player like Anthony, Amad potentially, Jadon Sancho, I don't know. But those three names, Amad, Sancho and Anthony, do they put you off signing Olise? Raphinha, for me, would also be a good signing. Another player like Araujo, if they need to offload him. Reports in Spain were suggesting around €50 million. That might get knocked down a little bit if that becomes €40 million. He's an exceptional option. Still only 27 years old, still putting up great numbers in La Liga, and his work in the Premier League is already well documented. At Leeds, he was an off-the-ball demon who scored goals from all over the place, beat his men for fun. In a team that went down, he still put up 14 goal involvements. Into the strikers, and this is where it starts to get really quite tough, because clearly Højlund needs some help up there. The poor guy has been run into the ground this season. He arrived with a significant back problem. Took him a little bit of time to get going. He's actually got 14 goals this season, 2 assists as well. Not too bad. He's played so many minutes in a really dysfunctional team without an awful lot of service. I love Rasmus Højlund. So then you got to find him a partner. I don't think Xerxes is quite right. He is going to cost a bunch, and Bayern Munich have that buyback clause. So any sort of cheaper option, you feel he's going to go back to Bayern, who are then going to try and shift him on themselves. Victor Osimhen is just, totally unrealistic. Totally unrealistic. There's just no chance. Joselu has done good work at Real Madrid. He's been a really interesting acquisition for them. At 27 years old now, you look at his last few seasons, 11, 13, 16, 9 this season in 13 starts, but not quite right for Manchester United. No disrespect to Joselu, but it feels like an upgraded version of Wout Weghorst. That narrows it down to 3 suggestions, one of which is Ivan Toney, who would be a good signing for the right price. Reports seem to be suggesting that price could be somewhere in the region of £40 million. Last season, he proved to be a really top-level Premier League striker. 20 goals in that Brentford side. Few of them were penalties, 6 of them were penalties. He's an outstanding penalty taker, so you can't hold that against him. This season with the 6-month ban, it feels, if we're honest though, like he's taken a little bit of a step back. He's returned and had injury problems, just the 4 goals. His off-the-ball work has left a little bit to be desired, as is his physicality. So maybe with a full pre-season, he comes back and goes straight into 2022-2023 Ivan Toney mode. If that's the case, he would immediately become a priority because he would dovetail quite nicely with Højlund. You don't feel like Ivan Toney arrives and is the superstar, I'm starting every single game. He's going to compete with Højlund for those minutes. Maybe he could even play up front with Højlund on occasion. I also think Guirassy would be a pretty good signing. €17 million release clause. He's not the most glamorous name out there, but he has been one of the best strikers in Europe this season. The most impressive thing for me about his season is he went off like a rocket, could not stop scoring goals. He went to AFCON, he had that dip in and around AFCON, didn't score at AFCON, came back, people were like, Guirassy, 6-month wonder. It's not happening for his second half of the season. Stuttgart maintained. Guirassy refound his form, and his non-penalty expected goal numbers have consistently stayed at 0.7. And those non-penalty expected goal numbers, kind of throughout his career, have been pretty damn good. You even go back to last year, they're at 0.5. His final season in Liga at 0.7. He's 28. He's not glamorous. I understand that. I'm kind of tempted to say that Guirassy, I think, would be a really good foil to Højlund. The final name is Benjamin Sesko. I just think this one's unrealistic. You look at his buyout clause, it's of course ramping up with his appearances and his goals. In January it was €50 million. Last month it was €65 million. By the end of the season it's expected to be 75 or even €80 million. It's increasing based on goals and appearances. At Leipzig, I think Openda has also had an astounding season. Would be a great move, but would probably cost the same, if not more, than Benjamin Sesko because he doesn't have the release clause and he was only signed in the summer. So I just think it's unrealistic. So that leaves Tosin, Maatsen, Todibo, Palhinha, Archie Gray, Olise and Guirassy as options. How many of them are going to happen? None. None. Let me know your thoughts, your signings in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. See you later.